There is a particular kind of confidence required to build a car that looks almost exactly like something else. Not a vague resemblance, not a shared design philosophy, but a deliberate and fairly transparent borrowing of visual language from vehicles that have spent decades building their reputations in some of the harshest conditions on Earth. BAIC has apparently decided it has that confidence because the BJ81 that is heading toward its official debut at the Beijing Auto Show in April looks like the product of someone who spent a long time staring at a Defender and a Wrangler before picking up a pencil. To be fair to BAIC, this is not an uncommon strategy in the Chinese domestic market, where buyers have shown a consistent appetite for vehicles that carry the visual authority of established Western off-road icons without necessarily requiring the price tags those icons demand. The approach works when the underlying product has enough genuine substance to justify the aesthetic ambitions, and it fails when the gap between how a vehicle looks and what it actually does becomes too obvious to ignore. Where the BJ81 ultimately lands on that spectrum is a question that the Beijing Auto Show may begin to answer, though the full picture will depend on real-world testing that has not yet happened. What has happened is that official images have been released ahead of the reveal, following some lower-quality leaked shots that surfaced back in December and generated enough curiosity to make the cleaner official pictures feel genuinely anticipated. Those images show a vehicle with a boxy, upright stance that makes no attempt to disguise its off-road aspirations. The front end is defined by a 5-slot grille that sits wide and prominent, flanked by circular headlights that have been modernized with integrated daytime running light signatures. The combination is effective in the way that most retro-influenced designs are effective, when executed with some restraint. The basic proportions feel honest and purposeful rather than forced, and the contemporary lighting treatment stops the whole thing from feeling like a straight-up replica rather than an interpretation. The bumper at the front is substantial, the kind of hardware that suggests readiness for contact with the environment rather than just contact with other cars in a supermarket car park. Whether the actual construction lives up to that visual promise is something that specifications and independent testing will need to establish, but the intent is clearly communicated. Side steps run along the lower body to help with getting in and out of what is a fairly tall vehicle. Mud flaps sit behind the wheel arches with appropriate conviction, and silver-finished wheels with red brake calipers add a degree of visual drama that edges the whole package slightly toward the performance end of the off-road spectrum without fully committing to it. The wheel arches themselves are pronounced front and rear, giving the BJ81 a muscular, planted appearance that works well with the overall proportions. This is one area where the design genuinely earns its keep rather than simply borrowing credibility from other vehicles. Well-executed wheel arch design on an off-roader communicates articulation capability and ground clearance in a way that buyers respond to intuitively, and whoever styled this part of the BJ81 understood that. Around the back, a split tailgate handles the practical loading requirements that buyers in this category tend to prioritize, and a large spare wheel mounted on the tailgate door completes what is now essentially a mandatory visual element for any vehicle trying to project serious off-road credentials. Tail lights, styled in a manner consistent with the squared-off rear structure, integrate neatly enough, and a tow hitch sits below the bumper, suggesting that carrying and pulling things is part of the intended use case rather than an afterthought. The overall rear view holds together well and maintains the purposeful character established at the front.
Then you get to the powertrain, and this is where the conversation becomes more complicated. Reports indicate the BJ81 will be powered by a 1.5-liter four-cylinder engine operating as a range extender within a hybrid system. That means the combustion engine is not primarily responsible for driving the wheels in the conventional sense. Its job is to generate electricity to extend the range of the electric drive system, a configuration that has genuine merit in certain use cases, but raises real questions when the vehicle it is fitted to is wearing the visual language of a serious off-road machine. Confirmed output figures have not been published at this point, which makes it difficult to assess the powertrain with any precision. What can be said is that range extender hybrid systems are not inherently unsuited to off-road use. Electric motors deliver torque instantly and at low speeds, which is actually well matched to the controlled, precise power delivery that challenging terrain demands. The question is whether the electric components in this particular system are calibrated and sized appropriately for the kind of sustained, low-speed, high-load operation that proper off-roading involves, or whether the setup has been optimized primarily for efficient urban and highway driving, with the off-road appearance serving mainly as a styling exercise. That distinction matters enormously to the people who would actually use a vehicle like this for what it looks like it is designed to do. Off-road enthusiasts are not a forgiving audience when it comes to the gap between visual promise and mechanical reality. They read specifications carefully, they talk to each other extensively, and a vehicle that cannot back up its appearance with genuine capability tends to develop a reputation that is difficult to shake. BAIC will be aware of this, and the decision to release design images well ahead of full specifications suggests either confidence in what the powertrain delivers or a preference for building visual momentum before the more technical conversation begins. What the hybrid setup does offer, and this should not be dismissed, is genuine relevance for buyers who are drawn to the off-road aesthetic but whose actual driving is predominantly urban. Improved fuel efficiency, lower emissions, and the ability to run silently on electric power in certain conditions are meaningful advantages in Chinese cities, where air quality regulations are tightening and fuel costs matter to a broad range of buyers. The BJ81 does not have to be a vehicle that people take rock crawling every weekend to justify its existence. If it serves as a capable, efficient, visually compelling family SUV that happens to look like it could handle more than it will ever be asked to, that is a viable product proposition in a market that has demonstrated repeatedly it will support exactly that kind of offering. The honest assessment at this stage is that the BJ81 presents itself more convincingly than it explains itself. The design is coherent and well executed, the visual references to established off-road icons are deliberate rather than accidental, and the overall package has enough presence to generate genuine interest ahead of the Beijing reveal. What remains unclear is whether the engineering underneath matches the ambition on top. And that clarity will only come when BAIC publishes full specifications and eventually when the vehicle reaches the kind of independent scrutiny that separates marketing language from real-world performance. April will bring the official reveal and presumably more detail about what the BJ81 actually does as opposed to how it looks doing it. That information will determine whether this is a vehicle worth taking seriously on its own terms, or simply a striking piece of automotive design sitting on top of a powertrain that was never really intended to fulfill the promise the bodywork makes. The honest assessment at this stage is that the BJ81 presents itself more convincingly than it explains itself. The design is coherent and well executed, the visual references to established off-road icons are deliberate rather than accidental, and the overall package has enough presence to generate genuine interest ahead of the Beijing reveal. What remains unclear is whether the engineering underneath matches the ambition on top. And that clarity will only come when BAIC publishes full specifications and eventually when the vehicle reaches the kind of independent scrutiny that separates marketing language from real-world performance. April will bring the official reveal and presumably more detail about what the BJ81 actually does as opposed to how it looks doing it. That information will determine whether this is a vehicle worth taking seriously on its own terms, or simply a striking piece of automotive design sitting on top of a powertrain that was never really intended to fulfill the promise the bodywork makes.